We'd like to welcome everyone to our meeting here, our May meeting of LSAC. To begin our meeting, we invite Interim Commissioner Kenny to provide an update from the Kentucky Department of Education.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fletcher, and welcome everyone. It's nice to see you in person as well as the superintendents that we have online with us this morning. First of all, I'd like to start off with congratulations to all of our districts that have lived through graduation, got everyone across the stage. It's always a really exciting time of year for everyone. And then I also want to talk for just a minute about the districts that are suffering from some storm damage that happened this last weekend. We're reaching out to some of those. I had the ability to talk by text to Superintendent Whalen from Dawson Springs yesterday, and once again, they have had the misfortune of being in the path of some pretty significant storms. Dawson Springs specifically has lost power, and they still weren't up as of yesterday afternoon. And unfortunately, he was one of those districts that still had one more week to go. So he's kind of scrambling just a little bit. So if you'll keep him and his district in your thoughts, as well as several other districts, Hopkins County, Lyons County, Caldwell County, Muhlenberg, and Mercer, and I'm sure there are lots of others that are being impacted by significant weather. I find it interesting, a different perspective I have now for every time that storms and severe weather come. The first thing I think of is our school districts, and hoping that they don't suffer any kind of damage or inability to operate. So if we can kind of keep them in our thoughts as we move forward. Lots of things going on this summer. Of course, we'll be welcoming Dr. Fletcher in just about a month, and we're really excited to have him join us. But I guess as I was thinking about things that are coming up, I kept coming across the phrase reading, reading, reading. We have lots of things going on in the literacy area this summer. We have a summer boost program that many of you have probably heard about. It's sort of in conjunction with our food service as well as literacy programs here at the Kentucky Department of Education. 29 districts that will be participating in summer boost this summer, and really going and encouraging families and our students to continue to read and encourage them to read over the summer months. The other benefit they get, about 1,000 books will be delivered free to each of our Summer Boost reading sites, which is always makes everybody smile when we can put a hand in some of our kids' books as they go home for the summer. The other thing we are having on June 3rd, which is a week from, well, I was going to say a week from today, but today's Tuesday. But the upcoming Monday on June 3rd, we will be having a Reading Research Center press conference, and we'll be announcing our new Reading Research Center. Again, Dr. Fletcher will be joining us for some reading, as well as Representative Tipton and Senator West will be joining us. And we'll be in Bourbon County celebrating our new research center. A couple of things, registrations that are open still with that literacy vibe. We have our Reads to Succeed Summer Conference, a really great opportunity for both administrators and teachers. That's on June 20th at the Central Bank Center in Lexington, and it's free. Always like to have that opportunity to provide that professional development to our teachers and administrators free of charge. And then cohort 3 of letters, we are getting lots and lots of really positive feedback about letters and the impact that it's making to instruction in our classrooms. We'll start cohort 3, and registration is open until August 30th for that through our Kentucky Reading Academies, and that's for K-5 educators. So certainly we have a summer full of reading, lots of busy things going on, in addition to the regular stuff that we during the summer, like you, trying to close out a fiscal year, starting up a fiscal year, very much like school districts in that regard. So I'm happy to answer any questions about either any of the reading initiatives we have going on or anything else going on here at the Kentucky Department of Education. I'll turn it back over to you, Dr. Fletcher.
Any questions for Commissioner Kenny?
Dr. Fletcher?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would just like to echo what Commissioner Kenny said about the letters training. We've had teachers in both cohorts, and they came back with very positive results and very, very happy with the training they received. So just wanted to let her know that we've seen a lot of positive on that.
Thank you so much.
Superintendent Cochran, I think you're actually going through the training, aren't you?
I am.
You want to talk a little bit about that just for a little bit?
I can tell you, I agree with Superintendent Borchers and Commissioner Keeney. It's been very beneficial for me from the administrative point of view to see, again, our point of view of what our teachers are going through when they go through the training. Also, a lot of a good strategy for implementing literacy in the classroom. So I highly recommend it to any and all.
As a former elementary principal, I think you really enjoyed this. It's been good to see. So I know in some of the conversations we've had, Superintendent Cochran and I, he's really enjoyed that. So it's good. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to share? I'll say one more thing before we move on in our agenda. Commissioner Kenny and I have been meeting on Fridays to kind of keep updates going back and forth, and she has been phenomenal and helping me prepare for this next step. And it'd be odd to sit in that chair at the next meeting, but again, she's been phenomenal, and again, just great to learn from, great to work with, and we'll continue those Friday meetings for a while, no doubt. So again, thank you so much for all you do.
You're very welcome.
We appreciate it. All right, next item on our agenda is work-based learning requests. Next, we welcome Dr. Beth Hargis from the Office of Career and Technical Education to provide an update on the review of work-based learning projects. Dr.
Good morning.
Hargis.
Good morning. Okay, Dr. Brewer, next slide, please.
So let's start with some really good news. I'm very happy to say that we have 753 students who have work-based learning records in Infinite Campus for the current school year. These are the ones that are aligned to a CTE pathway and course code, and of course, these students will be designated as post-secondary ready, and the experiences will be included in as a measure of accountability. Now, districts also have until July 31st to get all of the traditional, as I call it, the traditional work-based learning applications entered, so I'm sure this number will increase. Next slide, please. All right, so last year, KRS 158-6455 was amended to include as a measure of accountability an apprenticeship, co-op, or internship experience completed outside of the regular school day, week, or year, and that is not included as a high school course. This measure provides a means for students to attain a post-secondary readiness designation, and sometimes when they're not able to participate in a traditional form, and sometimes that's due to that they're involved in sports or some other extracurricular activity. So the regulations which guide the approval process include 703 KAR 5270, and this stipulates that successful completion has to be observed with a minimum of 300 hours, and then also 705 KAR 4041, including sufficient knowledge and skills necessary for success in the experience. The regulation requires the experience be aligned to a credential or associate degree and include 300 hours. These also have to be approved by the KBE following input from LSAC. So in 2023, LSAC provided input to KBE regarding the amendments to 703-5270, and those amendments were subsequently approved by the KBE. I'm happy to say that we received 42 applications by the May 1st deadline for the current school year. Next slide. So, and I know those are a little bit difficult to see if you're in the room, but based on the statute and regulations, our office utilized the scoring questions displayed to determine approval or denial of the applications which were received by that May 1st deadline. Applications which were submitted without required documentation and which could have been approved if it had been included, we actually returned those to the districts and asked for a resubmission. And as a reminder, the non-traditional, as I'm calling it, experience does not have to be tied to a specific CTE pathway for approval. For example, a student may have taken AP Civics, Advanced History courses, Political Science, and then perhaps they co-opt in a legal office over the summer. And so if all of the other requirements had been met, the hours, we would have approved that. So again, it can be done outside of the school year, outside of the school day, and can be unrelated to a CTE pathway. As stated, we received 42 applications and we completed a thorough review process and determined that 8 of those applications, or 19%, met the criteria for approval. Now, while this number may seem a little low, overall, the 42 applications were only 5% of the total that were received when you include the traditional work-based learning experiences of 753. We actually reviewed the applications twice to ensure that we were approving them according to statute and reg, and sought input from Commissioner Kenny, incoming Commissioner Fletcher, and Deputy Commissioner Allen. As with any new initiative, there's been a learning curve here. And we anticipate that going forward, we'll have increased, in the years to come, we'll have increased applications and approvals. And again, they can submit those throughout the year. They don't have to we don't have to wait until the end of the year to submit all of them. But I will say that out of the 42 that we received, 40 of them were received on April 29th and 30th. Next slide, please. Again, because this is a new accountability measure, our office has provided technical assistance in a variety of measures to districts throughout the year, and we will continue to do so. We have a very detailed FAQ that districts can refer, that's located on our website. And again, we've provided some individual one-on-ones with districts. All right, and next slide, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions from the group? Any online? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the work-based learning application and approval criteria?
So moved.
I have a motion by Superintendent Tilford, a second.
Second.
Second by Superintendent Mitchell. Any discussion? And at this time, Dr. Brewer, if you could have a roll call vote, please.
Kirk Biggerstaff,
Kirk Biggerstaff, yes.
Mike Borchers,
Mike Borchers, yes.
Harry Burchett,
Harry Burchett, yes.
Tom Cochran,
Tom Cochran, yes.
David Cox,
David Cox, yes.
Robbie Fletcher,
Robbie Fletcher, yes.
Will Hodges,
Will Hodges, yes.
Sheila Mitchell,
Sheila Mitchell, yes.
David Raleigh,
David Raleigh, yes.
Russ Tilford.
Russ Tilford, yes.
Okay, Chair, all members have voted.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hargis. Now we have 3 regulations for review and action. First, we will welcome Dr. Thomas Woods Tucker, Mickey Ray, Sarah Peace, and Crystal Rowland from the Office of Teaching and Learning.
Morning, Chair Fletcher, members of LSAC. We have 2 items for you all to consider. Turn it over to the team.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tucker. I am very happy to bring forward today, along with representatives from the Office of Teaching and Learning, the CAS for Visual and Performing Arts, our Kentucky Academic Standards. At the table with us, we have Crystal Rowland. She is the Director of the Division of Program Standards. And at the end of the table, we have Sarah Peace, who is our Policy Advisor. And there are 2 more folks that I would love to introduce to you today. In the audience, we have Thomas Klaus. He is our Academic Core Branch Manager. Thomas, if you can wave and stand. Thank you. And then we also have Jessica Green, and Jessica Green is our Academic Program Consultant for the Visual Performing Arts. Thank you, Jessica. And they have been critical players in facilitating this, what is an extensive process. So very grateful for their support and their willingness to be here if you have specific granular questions around the Visual Performing Arts standards this morning. I'm going to first turn it over to Sarah. And there are, as Dr. Tucker mentioned, 2 regulations that we're bringing forward to you today. And so, Sarah, if you can speak to those a bit, please.
Hi, good morning. It's wonderful to see you again. We are bringing 2 regulations. The first here is 704 KAR 8130, and that establishes a new administrative regulation for the Kentucky Academic Standards for Visual and Performing Arts, along with the material incorporated by reference. Also, this is the last content area that was previously under 704 KAR 3303. So you may remember that we have been slowly moving each content area to its own regulation under 704 KAR Chapter 8. And VPA, Visual and Performing Arts, was the last one. And so we will be asking the board for approval on KAR 8130 for VPA and then the repeal of 3303. And Mickey will go over more of the statutory basis for the standards review process.
So on the next slide, you can see KRS 158.6453. So this is the guiding statute for all of our standards review work. And you can see there it says that beginning in fiscal year 2017-2018 and every 6 years thereafter, the KDE is charged with facilitating the process for standards review. And it specifically mentions there the visual and performing arts. And so here we are today to bring forward those new standards. I do want to take a moment just to thank districts and certainly superintendents for allowing us access to your teachers. You know, part of the process that's required in law is the active participation of Kentucky educators. And so without your willingness to allow us to collaborate and engage with those folks, we would not be able to complete the process as required in law. And so just very grateful for what is their participation in a stringent and extensive process. But without them, we could not move forward and bring forward what we feel are high quality standards for the visual and performing arts. So I'll turn it over to Crystal now. She's going to talk to you about the process that was enacted by the committees.
So on the next slide, you can see the standards review process from start to finish through a little flow chart. We're in that last row today, bringing it to you guys before we bring it to the Kentucky Board of Education in early June. But it begins with selecting our advisory panels and our review committee members and a period of public comment. The writers then look at the public comment, they look at research, and then they draft changes to the standards. Those go out for another 30-day public comment period. They meet again to address any findings that comes from that period of public comment, and then finalize a final draft to bring forward for approval. On the next slide, you'll see some guiding principles that really focused the standards writers' work. Through the first round of public comment, they found 4 main needs reflected. Those were around clarity of language, really looking for a progression across grade levels that's developmentally appropriate for students. Alignment with research-based artistic processes for arts education and teacher autonomy. So they wanted the standards to be clear for all teachers regardless of experience in the classroom. That was important for them. So they developed a writer's vision, and that really drives the work that they do as they draft changes. And they were focused around destination, purpose, and values. These themes guided their work through the process with a focus on equity and support, clarity and consistency, and creativity and growth. On the next slide, you'll get a little bit more information around stakeholder feedback. So we had 2 public comment periods with a total of 146 responses, and respondents had the opportunity to respond as a whole to the CAS for VPA, or they could look at individual disciplines, so the 5 disciplines that are listed there on the screen. We had broad stakeholder representation, but we also had additional opportunities for feedback through focus groups. And so there were at least 5 focus groups there on the screen. You can see the groups that we met with to get more targeted feedback. The initial feedback indicated a desire to remain aligned to the National Core Arts Standards. And then once the draft was created, public feedback on the draft showed 75% or greater respondents selected to accept the standards as is, and the remaining 25% included a positive response with confirmation of acceptance. And some of the things that were mentioned was they really appreciated the architecture in the revised standards, that it really created increased usability for teachers, and that the language and clarity was very much improved through the revision process. On the next slide, you'll see what those revised standards look like. So There are 11 anchor standards, and again, those are aligned to the National Core Art Standards. And then across the top are the artistic processes. So, and then they're color coded to correspond with the National Core Art Standards, which makes it a beautiful document and very usable. I think of all of our standards documents, this one has to be the most appealing. So you'll see the first 3 anchor standards, those correspond to creating. So students are conceiving and developing new artistic ideas and work. And so under the next group, the purple group, those are artistic processes and standards that focus on realizing artistic ideas and work through interpretation and presentation. And so students are performing, producing, and presenting. The next group are responding, and they're understanding and evaluating how the arts convey meaning, and those align with those 3 anchor standards below. And then the final group is connecting. So relating artistic ideas and work with personal meaning in external context. And so you'll see this same structure across all 5 disciplines of the arts. So within dance, media arts, music, theater, and visual arts. And so we're very excited to bring this forward for approval. There is really that explicit link to United We Learn, where students are really engaging in vibrant learning experiences. And looking at the anchor standards, these are beautiful opportunities for students to develop the competencies that we would want to see in our learners. If you look at the next slide, so what does this standard actually look like in the document? This gives you a sneak peek. So the color coding holds true through each of the standards pieces. So in the top left, there's identification information. So you'll see the arts discipline, the artistic process, and the process component. On the right-hand side at the top, you'll see foundational information, such as the anchor standard that's specifically tied to it, the enduring understanding, the essential question, and key vocabulary that will be important for teachers and students to understand. Across the next band there, you'll see the progression. So that's the standards information that has the grade level and proficiency level, the standards coding, standards language, and key vocabulary. And you'll notice on the screen, this shows kindergarten, grade 1, and grade 2. So they're organized now by discipline. So if I'm a music teacher, I can see that this is the progression for my student in music across kindergarten, grade 1, and grade 2 as I'm instructing. And then at the bottom, there's additional clarification statements with the standards coding there as well to help improve understandability of what's included in the standard.
Okay, and at this time, we are happy to entertain any questions that you may have.
Superintendents, any questions?
I don't have any questions, but just a comment as looking over this over the weekend. I'm really impressed with the work and the layout and the structure. Of course, I know it aligns with the other structures, but like you said, with the color coding and just the flow and the artistic piece of it, I'm excited about the revision of the standards actually in this area, and also interested in how we might include that more in the accountability model in the future as we work towards, looking at those revisions in the future. So.
Thank you for that comment, Superintendent. I will say we do have the Seal for Arts Excellence that I think just will beautifully blend with the new updated Kentucky Academic Standards for VPA, and our Portraits of a Learner. I mean, when you think about some of those significant competencies that we're wanting for students as they move beyond K-12 education, it is grounded in components of the CAS for VPA. So many connections. But I agree with you. I think that certainly the arts community is very interested in how we can expand access and opportunity to Kentucky students in this specific area.
And
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and
I was just going to say,
tie
Nikki,
with United We Learn as well.
probably what I was getting ready to comment on. I appreciate it because we're still, as an L3 district, we're still piloting our learner profiles and things of that nature. And so I just visited, watched every level do their defensive learning. And so as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking about how this kind of helps them to create those presentations. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Thank you both to Superintendent Riley and Superintendent Burgett for those. Hearing no other comments, we're going to first do the motion for the 704. So do I have I'm sorry, 8130. Do I have a motion to approve 704 KAR 8130, the Kentucky Academic Standards for Visual and Performing Arts?
Harry Burchett, Harrison County, I'll make a motion.
Motion by Superintendent Burchett. Do we have a second?
I'd like to second that, please.
Second by Superintendent Raleigh. Any discussion? If not, this time we'll have a roll call vote.
Kirk Biggerstaff,
Kirk Biggerstaff, yes.
Mike Borchers,
Mike Borchers, yes.
Harry Burchett,
Harry Burchett, yes.
Tom Cochran,
Tom Cochran, yes.
David Cox,
David Cox, yes.
Robbie Fletcher,
Robbie Fletcher, yes.
Will Hodges,
Will Hodges, yes.
Sheila Mitchell,
Sheila Mitchell, yes.
David Raleigh,
David Raleigh, yes.
Russ Tilford.
Russ Tilford, yes.
All members have voted.
Now that we have all content areas moved out, let's move next. Do I have a motion for to approve the repeal of 704 KAR 3303, the required academic standards?
Mike Borchers, so moved.
Motion by Superintendent Borchers. Second?
Second.
Second by Superintendent Mitchell. Any further discussion? If not, Dr. Brewer, please.
Kirk Biggerstaff,
Kirk Biggerstaff, yes.
Mike Borchers,
Mike Borchers, yes.
Harry Burchett,
Harry Burchett, yes.
Tom Cochran,
Tom Cochran, yes.
David Cox,
David Cox, yes.
Robbie Fletcher,
Robbie Fletcher, yes.
Will Hodges,
Will Hodges, yes.
Sheila Mitchell,
Sheila Mitchell, yes.
David Raleigh,
David Raleigh, yes.
Russ Tilford.
Russ Tilford, yes.
Chair, all members have voted.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Woods Tucker, Ms. Ray, thank you all and your team. Thank you so much for your work. We appreciate that so much.
Yep.
Next, we have Matt Ross and Che Ritter from the Office of Finance and Operations. They'll present proposed amendments to 702 KAR 3320, which are the finance officer certification requirements.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So this is the second go around. We brought this before as a discussion item to sort of get your input and feedback. You know, I think the finance officer regulation was 8 to 10 years old since the sort of statutory changes. We were looking to modernize, really trying to maximize district flexibility while still ensuring that level of professionalism that I think is necessary for, you know, the financial health of your districts. So I'll let Che sort of go through the changes. I think we have maybe one little question or one I'd like to get a little feedback at the end, something that sort of came up late in the game, but I'll let Che sort of talk about the changes so far.
Yeah, good morning. It's good to see everybody again. Like Matt said, we didn't make any radical changes from last time we were here. A few, I think, fine tuning, trying to get this to a point. Our goal was to make it a little more organic, based on what we've experienced as a state agency, helping you all try to find finance officers, situations that have popped up over the years. And I think we've got a relatively good product in front of us with, like Matt said, with one question at the end. I'll just very briefly go over some of the changes that we felt were pretty significant. One, I think one of the larger ones that we really wanted to focus on was allowing a finance officer to be qualified under work experience of 10 years or more. We talked about this a little bit last time. A lot of districts struggled or they had someone internal they really liked as a candidate, but they may not have had the right degree, et cetera. And so we felt this would give superintendents a little more wiggle room in getting qualified applicants. And we did find in a lot of cases, these people, once they became finance officers, were fine. It's not like we had one or two bad ones. We had a lot of really good internal candidates. And state government operates in sort of the same way in a lot of cases too. So we felt that was pretty reasonable. Another one, this was easy to increase the stipend from $1,000 to $1,500. Probably won't hear any complaints on that from finance officers.
Which is covered by.
Yeah, that's covered by KDE, not from the district. That's been the case since the beginning. I think 2015 was the old regulation. So since the beginning, we've always paid that. Increasing number of continuing ed hours to 18. added CPE provided by a professional as approving or approved continuing education classes, created new record-keeping requirements, and finally, I think this one was the interim finance officer. We've had situations pop up where a finance officer, due to illness, injury, what have you, an interim is required or needed. And sometimes that interim is there for a couple weeks just to kind of keep things rolling, and sometimes a little longer term. It's really hard for us to predict every situation that's going to happen. We've had, unfortunately, finance officers with medical issues that are very long term. We've had some that sort of on the temporary, like month or two, and they're fine. And then, or the gap between hiring a new finance officer. If, God forbid, one of our finance officer passes away, the district, it may take them a while to find qualified applicants, so an interim can step in. A lot of times these interims are very qualified former finance officers from other districts in the region. So we don't really have an issue with that. It's just the time frame. What is an interim and what isn't an interim? When does an interim become that guy's been here way too long? Or things, that's what we've kind of struggled with. And I think we sort of settled on leaving that interim kind of open-ended. And that's, I think, where we wanted to get your all's feedback. Because we were afraid if we said, well, let's cap it at 6 months, we're going to have a situation where they're needed for 7 months. And we also discussed if it exceeded a certain amount of time, is it a good process to make the district come back to KDE and say, due to this situation, we're going to need them for approximately another 2 or 3 months, and the KDE would approve it based on the need, and more of an awareness approval. We just don't know if that's a good process for the districts or not. So be happy to take any questions or comments.
Any comments, superintendents?
I'll comment that just as we spoke the last time, the process for being able to have a work-based experience approval as part of the certification process is instrumental, in my opinion. We've got a lot of us, we've got a lot of great people that's done a lot of work in finance in a lot of areas that just may not have that, like you said, that certain degree. So I appreciate that addition to the regulation wholeheartedly. As far as the interim goes, I could certainly see where there could be problems where you might not be able to fulfill it with a permanent replacement in a timely fashion. And so therefore, an open-ended timeline is fine with me. If you feel like there's a need to have some kind of process for them for, a review and then a resubmittal of something, I would be okay with that too, but.
Something where they can apply for an extension?
Right, yeah.
Okay. So maybe like a school year, and then if it's going to go to the next school year, they would apply to KDE for an extension, right? That way there's some measure of oversight or at least knowledge of what's going on, right? So
right.
I think because of Che's awareness and staff's awareness of all these different scenarios, I think that was initially just sort of drafted with that open-ended. But I think that's sort of the question that came up, like there needs to probably be some process that at least there's a knowledge of what's going on in a district, for fear that it just gets away from you, right? And you just roll with what works. But
27 years as an interim would be a little strange, but concerns me.
Well, fiscal year end would be, that would make sense. And then just resubmit that, we've got a job post and we're still working on it, but we're going to need to continue the interim into the next school year.
So Todd, could we approve that sort of change by like a voice motion and then adjust our reg to meet that, to take in front of the KDE?
Does the current reg have 6 months? Is that what?
It doesn't have, it's an open-ended process. So I think we would like to be end of fiscal year with the application to KDE to approve for an additional school year or whatever amount of time is requested.
So in LSAC's motion, they could note that their recommendation to make that change, and then KDE staff can make that between now and the KBE meeting, assuming that the commissioner agrees, and take it before the KBE with that change.
Yeah, I agree with that. When we were reviewing it, it did cause me to pause and say, well, then what are we saying to the people that have met the requirements? we've tried to make that more flexible, but to have an interim that would serve in that capacity for, and I know Chase said 27 years, but, it could be 2 or 3 years, then, we need to be saying you really need to find someone with the qualifications that would be the permanent finance officer. So I would be very supportive of something that would cause us to sort of do that check after each fiscal year or each June 30th of each year. That way, if you have someone that comes in August or September, they can stay the entire school year. If they come in at the end of the school year, then we're looking to say, do you need that extension to get you through the next school year?
And this also helps us internally, especially logistically, make sure the right people are getting tax rates, all this information that comes in July, the wave of work that comes in July. So that will really help the department as well. So I think that's a good time frame. Fiscal year seems to work pretty well.
So as far as the motion, I would assume that we want to approve the 702 KR 3320 with the recommendation that at the end of the fiscal year, we'd have a reapplication process for the interim status. That sound correct? Yep. Okay. Any other discussion before we have a motion? Hearing none. Do I have a motion to approve 702 KAR 3320, the finance officer certification requirements, with the recommendation that at the end of the fiscal year, there would be a reapplication for interim status?
I'll make that motion, Dr. Fletcher.
Motion by Superintendent Riley. Do you have a second?
Russ Tilford, second.
Second by Superintendent Tilford. Any further discussion?
I just have a question, and my question really is around just the timing of that. For one reason, I'm a superintendent that is hired for. It is challenging, and I understand the need for the process, and I agree with it. I'm not saying that. My question really is around just the timing, changing, I guess, finance officers between June and July has to be challenging just because you're closing one year and you're opening another year, and that has always been a concern for me as superintendent, because in change of hands, at times you do lose some of the common knowledge, you lose some of the understanding of the reason why things were done. You also lose just the knowledge base of the finance officer that made some of those changes. And then you have errors, and then you have a challenging time trying to fix those. Then you have the auditors that come in behind you trying to work through that process. So, I'm not really questioning, I guess, the timing. My question is there a better time, in your opinion, as the finance team that would work better because of that? I have been the superintendent that's had the recipient or has been the recipient of challenges that come after that process. And nobody wants audit findings because of the change of hands of finance officer. So, I'm just asking you to think, is there a better time for that, or is that really the best time that you could recommend?
So I think you could change at any point, right? Like you could hire during your regular contract period, and then you wouldn't need your extension, right? I think it's just saying you need an extension to go into the next year. It wouldn't be necessarily you having to change that job at that time, right?
I feel like you could proactively request that we're going to dip into the next fiscal year if you knew it was coming.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to wait till, I don't want to wait till, June 30th and then get two or three of these. If it's March and you think we're going to need this person till at least September, to me, that seems pretty reasonable to go ahead and request it and say, and if you came back and said, well, we need, the next year, and July is an awful month for finance officers. And I get exactly what you're saying about the auditors are coming in. Anything we can do to sort of front load and say, okay, you're good to go, we're out of your way, will make us very happy too, I think.
And I think we intend to sending like a KDE process, not a KBE process. So it wouldn't be like a formal request to the board. It would be more of an administrative
Pretty
thing.
quick and painless, I think, as long as we understood who it was, because we want to make sure we get the right information to the right people, of course, and what your all's need was. And in a lot of cases, we'll talk. I know we talked to Superintendent Burchett during his search, and if I know in situations where they've had an interim step in, and there may be construction going on, they don't want to bring somebody new in on that, or they want to keep the interim to do certain things, but bringing the new person to do a few other things. There's so many variables. It's really hard for us to pin down the perfect date or process, I think. But this seems to be pretty flexible, and hopefully, and if it doesn't work, we're always happy to come back to you all on our board and say, look, this isn't working very well, or it's too convoluted or whatever. We want to make sure it's a much smoother process.
I mean, I think that's why we've been open to the conversation, is because this position is so critical for districts, right? And it's so difficult to get the people with the skills sometimes. And I know districts struggle, so we want to be as flexible as possible.
Again, great question and great clarification too. Again, we want to be as flexible as possible to districts that, and it makes perfect sense if it's March and you want to, it makes sense to go to September. But also too, there's an awareness of KDE. Not that we wouldn't be in the first place, but we'd be able to work more closely with districts to say, how can we help you in this transition? So,
yeah, I think the loss of knowledge is a real concern, and loss of process, right? And that's really important for oversight and good financial health. So.
Thank you.
any other discussion? Okay, we do have a motion by Superintendent Riley and a second by Superintendent Tilford. This time, roll call vote, please.
Kirk Biggerstaff,
Kirk Biggerstaff, yes.
Mike Borchers,
Mike Borchers, yes.
Harry Burchett,
Harry Burchett, yes.
Tom Cochran,
Tom Cochran, yes.
David Cox,
David Cox, yes.
Robbie Fletcher,
Robbie Fletcher, yes.
Will Hodges,
Will Hodges, yes.
Sheila Mitchell,
Sheila Mitchell, yes.
David Raleigh,
David Raleigh, yes.
Russ Tilford.
Russ Tilford, yes.
Good, Chair. All members have voted.
That being said, before we adjourn, I'd like to take a moment to recognize a couple of our superintendents that are heading into retirement. And I'll start with David Riley, who has been our vice chair. We thank him so much for his work. Anything you'd like to say, Superintendent Riley, before seeing how this is your last meeting for us?
You know, it's always a pleasure to serve in any capacity, and it's been a pleasure to serve on this particular committee for the past 6 years, maybe 5.5. You know, just appreciative of the leadership of this committee. I'm appreciative of the leadership throughout the state from all of our superintendents. It has, you know, the past few years, it's not been an easy go. But you know, they continue to adapt, improvise, and overcome. So just thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you so much for your service. And also Superintendent Borchers. Anything you'd like to say, sir?
Well, just want to thank everybody. I'd like to thank Commissioner Kenny and for you, Dr. Fletcher. I think the state's in good hands moving forward. Everyone around the table, we've been colleagues, but I think we all end up being friends at the end when this journey comes to an end. So hopefully I'll still be around in some capacities down the road, but I want to thank everybody for all the hard work they've done for the kids of Kentucky. And I think we're in good hands. So thank you.
Well, both gentlemen, both of you have been such a calm, steady hand. We appreciate that so much. Appreciate the work of everyone on LSAC, but these two, as you go into retirement, we wish you the absolute best of luck. We know we'll hear more from you in the future, and hopefully sooner than later, after 90 days. We look forward to what you guys have to do, and we appreciate you so much. And also, too, as vice chair and chairs, we're stepping off. This committee will also, in the next meeting, we'll be looking at who would be suitable to be chair and vice chair also, too. So that being said, gentlemen, we thank you also for your presentation. And with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Motion by Superintendent Burchett, second. Second by Superintendent Cochran. We are adjourned.